Hi, how lovely to see you. So MGC is here, my name is Alexey, and this is Time for Study. So today we are going to talk about AOP and Spring AOP in particular. At my regular work, I usually face the aspects with Spring AOP, and I decided to gather all my knowledge in one place and share with you. So you could expect three main parts. In the first part, we will talk about how to write aspects with Spring AOP. In the second part, we will take a look at how Spring AOP works under the hood, so that you will understand everything about the Spring AOP. And in third part, we will take a look how the Spring itself uses AOP and how other libraries leverage the Spring AOP. So, I hope you are looking forward to start. Then let's begin. Before we start, I would like to mention that we are going to take a look at Spring AOP. Thus, you should already be familiar with Spring, and we also will use the Spring Boot. So I assume that this part will also covered by you. So, to understand the AOP, we will start from the small example. Assume that you are already a software engineer and you have the congratulations service. So this service is really simply just two methods which just congratulate you. So, and you receive the task that you should add logging for those methods. Okay, let's start do this. How we will solve this task? Yeah, we will do this in a simple way. We just add the logging statement at the beginning of the method and at the end of this method, and do this for both methods. So this is simple. This is simple enough, and we could commit this code and ask for the review. Okay, let's try to understand what is the good part of this code and what is the bad part of this code. So, what do we have for this implementation? So, its pros is that this code is simple and straightforward. It's easy to understand and it completely have no magic. Everything that you see, it's exactly what's happened. What the cons of this implementation? So, for this approach, it will be hard to reuse this, because if you would like to add logging in more methods, you will just copy-paste these log statements. And another cons here is that the main logic sits with the infrastructure logic. So our logging code tightly coupled to our business logic. So what we could do better in this case? Just as usual, if we have something that we would like to reuse, we can just move this to a separate method. So here, in both those methods, we extracted the new log execution method, which is just a static method where we pass the method arguments and the runnable as our code. And here we add even more logic, and then we could log the execution at the start of this method, then start counting the execution time, run the method itself, and stop the counting and log the finish message with the execution time, and even catch the exception and log the failed execution too. So this is even better, and now it's easy to reuse this code. We just specify which method executed, which arguments we have for both methods, and the code itself. So we still have the same parts. We commit this code and ask for review, and now let's take a look at this code more precisely and try to understand what is the benefits and drawbacks of this code. What do we have here? So the first part of this implementation is it's still simple and straightforward. Everything that you see, it's exactly what is going on. So here we have less overhead with the method invocation, so we could reuse this code with no penalty, performance penalty on everything else. And this is easy to reuse. So if you would like to add logging to another method, you just add this method invocation and another method, and that's it. So what the cons of this implementation? So we have to specify several methods because some of them could have different signatures based on our code which we would like to execute. So in our case we use the runnable, but it could be callable because we may need to handle the exceptions, we may need to handle the return result, and so on and so forth. So it's creates the necessity for you to create several such methods and usually try to reuse them to fit all your needs. Okay, so we received this feedback from our review, and our more mature engineer advised us to use the AOP for this need, because it's particularly something that is really good fit for the AOP concept in general. So let's first of all take a look at what is AOP and when do we need this. AOP is the programming paradigm that aims to increase modularity by allowing the separation of cross-cutting concerns. So in our example, the cross-cutting concern is the login. So we have the main logic, which is the CongratulationService and its method, and we have something like which is sitting near this business logic, and it is the login. So it does so by adding behavior to existing code and advice without modifying the code itself, instead separately specifying which code is modified via the pointcut specification. So in our case, we have the business logic, which is the CongratulationService, and we have the advice. So advice, it will be the login itself, and then will be separated from each other. And by the pointcut, you specify something like special that says that this login logic will be added to your main, your business logic. So how to do this? So to address this in our Spring application, we could leverage the Spring AOP. So let's take a look at the Spring AOP documentation. Basically, the Spring AOP documentation is the place where you could find all the answers about how to use the Spring AOP, which I also show with you, so you should definitely read the documentation. So here you could find that aspect-oriented programming complements the object-oriented programming by providing you another way of thinking how to organize your code. So in the aspect-oriented programming, we have the one model with your main business logic and another model with your cross-cutting concerns like the logging in our example. So here, if you read this, you will understand how to write the Spring AOP aspects, but let me show you how to do this. In our example, as I already mentioned, as we already know, that with the AOP, you could separate your cross-cutting concerns and your business logic. So here, in this example, when we start using the AOP, you could see that our CongratulationService left without any change. As we had two methods, we have them and nothing no login logic here at all. To start with the Spring AOP, you need to create a separate class, which will be the component, and mark this class as the aspect. So Spring will scan your component and understand that this class is the special class which contains the aspect logic. Then you need to specify two main parts. The first one is the pointcut and the second one is the advice. So the pointcut is the explanation where you need to add the new logic. So in our case, we need the execution. So we try to intercept the method execution, and we need everything that sits in the CongratulationService. So this asterisk means that all methods with any arguments. So we need to add some logic on the method executions from the CongratulationService for the all methods with any arguments. So this is our pointcut. And after pointcut, you have to specify the advice. So we will use the around advice, which means that we would like to do something before and after method execution. So we fully control when we will execute the main method, the business logic of our code. And we, in this around advice, we specify the pointcut. So since we already defined the pointcut as the method in this class, we just specify the name of this method. So Spring will understand where to find your pointcut. And here, in this advice method, we specify the return, something that will be returned. We also specify the proceeding join point, and based on this object, we could get the signature of the method which we intercepted. This signature, from this signature, we could fetch all the arguments, all those names and values, and gather them into one string, which will be generic string, and it will be depend on the method which is being intercepted. And here we again log the start method execution, then start counting the time how long it will be executed. Then we invoke the proceed method of the proceeding join point. So here the place where we execute the main logic itself, the method of the business logic of our application, and then we stop, and again we log the execution, and if something happened, we also could log the exception. So let's take a look how this works. So I have the small application here. We create the application context, get this CongratulationService bin, and execute its logic. So if you run this, you will see that before the first method, where we congratulate the Alexei, we log the start execution message, and we specify which method we are logging, which arguments it have, which types, and which values of this method arguments. Then we have something output from the method itself, and then we log the method execution, the finish of the method execution, and here the time. And the same for the second method too. So here we again congratulate the Alexei and present him a gift. If you take a look at our service code again, you will see that in our second method with 2 arguments, we call the first method from the same service too. And in case of the Spring AOP example, you see that we do not have 2 logging statements that we execute initially the second congratulate method and then the first congratulate method. So this is the limitation of the Spring AOP. So you could not intercept the invocations of the methods within the single object. So I will, in the second part, you learn why we have this limitation, and it will be clear. But as for now, you should only keep this in mind and take into account. Okay, again, we commit this code and ask for the one more review, because now we do this in the most convenient way, and now we have the logic and the aspect logic separated. And now let's try to revisit this implementation one more time. So what do we have with the new AOP implementation of our logging functionality? So our first part is that we have now clear separation of the business logic and cross-cutting concerns, and them are completely separated even in different classes. Also, our code base now become a bit modular, because we have the one module, one class for the logging, and the business logic itself stayed unchanged. Also, this is really easy to extend. So if you, for example, would like to add logging logic to another methods, you could simply specify extend your point cut, and this logging logic will be applied to this business logic too. And in this implementation, when we for example, write the test for our business logic, we will not need to test our aspect logic, because we have the aspect logic and the business logic separated, so we could test one thing and then another without any interception. So the cons of this implementation is that actually it's too magical. So when you take a look at your CongratulationService, you have no way to understand why this is being logged and what is going on if you do not take a look at the aspect class. And this another cons that now you need pay more attention to the testing, because now you need to test your business logic just as usual. It's not a big deal, but you also need to test your aspect logic, and you in ideal world you also need to test your aspect logic with the business logic in the conjunction. So this is what do we have here? And this is the most preferable way to write something like the logging to your code, but actually we could do a bit better in this case, and let's take a look how we can do this. The problem of the previous implementation with the Spring AOP is that it's too magical. So when you take a look at the CongratulationService, you have no way to understand why this code is being logged and what has happened. So usually, when you would like to add some aspect logics, you need a way to say explicitly that what do you need in this business logic. So usually in Java, you use for this purpose, you use the annotation. So we create the new annotation log method. And if, for example, you would like the particular method to be logged, you just add this annotation to this method and it should be logged. So this is now it's clear that you would like logging aspect here and like no magic. So you at least know that if you see this annotation, something should happen here, and some way you should find this. So let me show you the log method annotation. I've added here one additional attribute, log arguments. So this is the Boolean value. If you would like to log arguments, you specify this as true. So this is default value, so you could just leave this unspecified. And if you, for example, need arguments of the method, you specify this value as false. In this case, we still have the aspect. So please pay attention that I didn't add the component annotation here. I did this intentionally because now we could, for example, specify the aspect as a bin in the configuration class. So here you should understand that if you specify only the aspect annotation on your class, it won't be enough, because you need to mark this class also as the component, so that Spring will like add this particular class to the its context. And also one more like change here is that we're still using the around advice, but the point cut now we like specify as is without like any additional methods with the explicit point cut annotation in this class. And also we use the log method. So this is just the name of our argument, which refers to the log method annotation. And Spring also could understand that if you specify the argument name, it will find what this argument is and like try to understand which point cut you specified. So annotation here means that we like try to capture everything that has the annotation, the log method annotation. So in Spring, you could like intercept only the method execution with the aspect. So in our case, everything that annotated with the log method will be matched our point cut and will be aspected with our logic. And here we have nothing changed. So let's also take a quick look that everything works as expected. So this should work as before. And you could indeed see that we have two invocations and we have logging statements. And now, if you commit this code, I believe it's like will be the most applicable and will be the most suitable for all your needs. So let's again quickly like take a look what do we have and what the benefit of this implementation, for example, prior to the previous one. So we have the same as above pros and cons, but now one additional pros here is that our like aspect logic now it's a bit explicit. So now we understand that we have the log method annotation, and if you see this annotation on the method, you like understand that you need to take a look at the another classes, and you will see which logic will be added based on this annotation. So this is like the mark of the places where you need to add your aspect logic. Okay, our congratulation service continue growing, and now we have one more additional method, which is send gift to. So in this method, we prepare and can send gift to the person and return this person. So what we need to do with this method is that we would like to make sure that this method executed only by one thread at any time. So we need to exclusive log functionality for this method. And since we are like already working with the AOP, so this looks like the functionality which exactly could be implemented. Like it's a good implementation of it by using the aspects. So let's again reuse the best practices of the Spring AOP writing, which we already know, and declare the exclusive log annotation and write the aspect for this annotation. So annotation itself, it's really simple, nothing special, only the annotation is this. Also pay attention that you need the retention policy runtime, so that this annotation will be available at runtime, because without this like runtime availability, everything of this will not work. So here we have the exclusive log aspect. Again, this is aspect, so I specify this as the bin int aspect config, so that's why our aspect is is found by the Spring. Here we have the log object which will be injected here, so it's completely okay in the Spring inject any bin which you would like and which you need in your aspect. So we injected this here. Again, we need the around advice because we need to control the when this method will be invoked and whether this will be invoked at all. And our pointcut is again everything that annotated with the exclusive log annotation. So here you could see that we do not need this annotation in our aspect logic itself. Thus, we need to specify the full qualified name of this annotation, and we can not specify this into aspect logic itself. So here we try to log. If we could do this, we invoke our method. If not, we will not do this. So around advice is the perfect, the beauty of the around advice is that you fully control the logic execution. So here, for example, you could see that we will proceed, we will invoke the next, the aspected method only if we meet some condition. If not, we will not invoke this, and this is completely okay. So we again have the small configuration where we specify the logging aspect and the log itself. And now let's take a look at the example of this execution. So here we get the CongratulationService, we get the log from our context, log it explicitly, and by another thread we try to execute the send gift to method, and it should not be invoked because we already hold the log. So here at the logs you could see that we have start execution. So our method tried to be executed, and we have this from the logging aspect, and then we have the message dash. Since we could not obtain the log, we will not execute this method. Interesting part here is that in our CongratulationService we have two annotation, log method and exclusive log. So that means that two aspects should be suitable for this method. And in this case, as you could see by the log, our logging aspect was executed first, and then only the exclusive log aspect was executed. But in our case, I think it's more suitable if we initially we execute the exclusive log aspect logic, and only if we could invoke the send gift to method, then we execute the log method aspect. So how we could address this? To address this, we need to specify the order for our aspect. So by default, each aspect have the default order, and if we would like, for example, the log aspect being first, we just need to increase the order of this aspect and specify the highest precedence which is possible. And Spring in that case will use this order, and when all those aspects will be applied, they will be applied according to the order. So if we now invoke the same method, the same main method. So here you could see that we have only one message which says that we could not obtain the log, and no logging statements. And one more example, our CongratulationService continue evolving, and now we have one more method which is does the create gift for the person. So here we again prepare the gift and then return the DTO object with our gift. So here we need one additional functionality for this method. So we need to publish the result of this method to the application context. So we use the event listening capability of the Spring, and we need to publish the returned object of this method to publish it to the application context. So here again, we this looks like the good functionality for the AOP, because we need just to add this cross-cutting concern with no direct relation to the business logic code. And how we could do this? So we could use the publish result annotation anywhere, so for any method, but it really makes sense only for the method which returns something. So if, for example, you use publish result annotation on the method which returns void, it doesn't make sense because void is nothing, and we could not publish this object to the application context. So here I need to save myself and add some additional check. If, for example, someone put the publish result annotation on the method, I need to check that this method returns something different than void. So how we could do this? So we could not do this in our regular point cuts, because in point cut you could not write any conditional logic and so on. So to address this, you need to specify the point cut and the advice as this separate objects. So here let's start from the point cut. So in the Spring you have the special interface point cut which you could implement, and this will be like the programmatic, how the point cut looks programmatically. So here you could see two methods, get class filter. So you need to decide which class you would like to aspect and which is not. So for the classes, we all classes suits us, and for method matcher we have the annotation method matcher. So everything that has the publish result annotation should be something that we need. And in our implementation, we override the matches method of the annotation method matches. Here we invoke the super method, so we allow the annotation method matches method to be invoked. And if this match, we do some additional check that our return type of our method is not the void class. So this is particularly the situation when we add the check that you could not specify the publish result annotation on the methods which returns void. So once this will be executed, you will get an exception. And we also could specify the advice for our implementation. It's again the separate object, and here we have the after returning advice. So all the previous time we used the around advice, so we have the full control over the business logic execution, but you could also use a different advice types. So here, for example, we use the after returning advice, so we have the after returning method. So if the execution of our method finished with the returning of the value, we could execute our advice method. And here, if we receive the not null value, we will publish it to the event publisher. So our application event publisher is our dependency. Okay, how we should use those objects? To use those objects, we need to specify everything as the bin in the context. So point cut is the something where you explain what needs to be advised, and the advice itself is the code which needs to be added to the place where you specify by point cut. So you need to gather all those together in the something that called point cut advisor, and this point cut advisor should be added to the context so that Spring understands that you specify the aspect and will use it. So we use the default point cut advisor, which just takes the point cut and the advice. And again, since it's the bin, we could afterwire here the application event publisher and pass it as our dependency to our advice. Also, we used the special annotation role here. So we help the Spring a bit and specify that this bin is the something that's from the AOP world, and we specify that its role infrastructure. So it's not the usual bin which should be advised and so on and so forth. So we help a bit for the Spring. So here, how you could make your advice work. In some really special cases, you may need to use the default bin factory point cut advisor. So this is the special advisor which accepts the point cut as is and accepts the advice, but not the advice object, but the name of this advice object. So here in the context we have additional bin, which is our after returning advice, where we afterwire the application event publisher, and this is this way of declaring the point cut advisor is needed when you, for example, have the advice which needs another advised bin. So, for example, you have a dependency, maybe something that not the application event publisher. This is the another bin in the context, which again advised bin. So to get this advised bin and make sure that your advice is working, you could specify this as a bin and not specify the direct object in the point cut advisor, but the reference to this bin from the context. So in some cases you will need this, And again, we will like talk about this case in the second part of our Spring AOP journey. And now let's take a look that our code is really working and I'm not like confusing you. So here we again have the congratulations service and we invoke the create gift for Alexei, and we also define the event listener for our gift DTO object. And here, according to the output, we have the congratulations for the Alexei preparing the gift, and we like logged this gift DTO object. Okay, so now you like understand how to write the aspects, and you like know several ways how to do this and what the difference between them and all the other aspects of the writing AOP with the Spring AOP. So now let's take a look a bit about how we should test this AOP code. The first implementation which you could like imagine when you will try to test the aspect logic is just to use the regular unit test with the mocking. So you like, for example, if we are going to test the our lock aspect, we like mock the lock itself, we mock the proceeding join point, we create the aspect as is, like just as an object, inject all the mocks to this object, and then just like execute our aspect method just as is. So this approach is like could take place, why not? So it's still the test, but actually you test the aspect logic in isolation. So you like have no idea whether you like whether this aspect will be applied to the proper place. If, for example, you have some business logic. So to address this, you could write the test in a bit different way. The second option, how you could like write the test for your aspects, is the launching the context, the whole Spring application context, and this context will create the congratulations service for you. So you just afterwire this bin here. Also you make bin the lock to control its behavior, and in your test you just use your afterwired congratulations service. So now you test not the aspect directly, but you test the like your business logic. But now you like should assume that here you like have your advice logic also applied to your business logic. And here we like specify that if you could not lock on this lock object, you will not receive the result, and you will not like get the method executed. So here you need to specify the configuration service so that it will be in your context. Some aspect config is the config with the aspect lock aspect, and also additional config which enables the AspectJ after proxy for your Spring context. So this is a quite good way. So if, for example, I launch this test, it will be executed. But actually here we need to start the whole application context by Spring. And if, for example, you have a lot of classes, it could be a bit cumbersome to like start the whole application context. To address this caveat, you could continue like with the unit tests and even the Makito, but do like a bit test your congratulations service in a bit different way. So here we could still specify the we could still create the congratulations service as our target logic and use the special ProxyFactory which comes from the Spring, and this is in particular AspectJProxyFactory, where we specify the target. So we specify which like object should be proxied. Also, we add the aspect, which is exclusive lock aspect. So here is our aspect class, which is specified here. So since we are using the AspectJProxyFactory, this particular ProxyFactory understands your like aspect annotation and all your classes which contains this aspect. And then we like ask the ProxyFactory to create the proxy, and here we get the reference to our congratulations service. And here we have exactly the same test, and here you could see that we expect that our return result will be null. So our like main logic, the main method on the original congratulations service will not be executed. So again, if we run this test, we could see that everything is working, and we like really have the aspect logic here applied. So lock was not obtained. This approach, as for me, is most preferable because here we have the truly unit test, which is fast fast and simple, and we do not launch the whole Spring application context, which could be quite big if you have a big application. And this is, as for me, the most suitable way for testing your business and Aspect logic at once. And let's take a look at our final aspect, where we create all the components as is. So to test this method and to leverage our approach when we just use the ProxyFactory for this aspect testing, we do exactly the same. We specify that we have the Makita test, we specify the application event publisher as the mock, and we have our advisor, where we just ourselves create our pointcut and advise objects. So in first method, we have the test class, which have the publish result annotation on the method, which returns nothing, which returns void, and using the ProxyFactory. So in our previous example, we used the AspectJProxyFactory, and this extension of the ProxyFactory understand the advisors, which is just objects which have the advice annotation, but the simple ProxyFactory works with the direct pointcut advisors, with the advisors itself. So here we do not have AspectJ annotations, so that's why here we could use the ProxyFactory. So we specify that as our target is the instance of our test class, we add the advice for this ProxyFactory, and if we try to create the proxy in such setup, we will receive the AOP config exception, which have the clause as our illegal state exception, because we could not use the publish result annotation on the method which returns void. So this is the runtime exception, but if you create this bin on the startup of your application context, you receive this error on startup, and your context will not be launched due to this error. So and here the test, exactly the same test. If we have a valid object, you could assert that you receive you publish this event. And here, if we, for example, have the runtime exception on our method, so as I've so since we have the publish result, we have after returning advice for it. So if this method throws an exception, we should not publish any events, because our after returning advice will not be invoked at all. So here you could see that we never invoke the publish result annotation. So if you run this test, you will see that all of them are green. And that's it. So I hope you learned a bit more about Spring AOP, and now if you not wrote any aspect at all, you will not afraid to do this. Or if you already have some aspects on your back, you will do this better. And just remember that Spring AOP is not something the best thing in the world which you should use everywhere. It's just one more tool which you could use if you want to, and you just should be aware of it, and do not afraid of using it, but do this with caution, and also take into consideration all the pros and cons of your implementation, and do it which best serves your needs. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, make sure that you subscribe to our channel to not miss the second part of our Spring AOP journey, and also like this video to pay respects to the to the Alexei. So see you in the next video. Bye.